And here he is. Welcome,
Hello.
Casey. Hi. And welcome to everyone joining us today. My name's Asha, and I'm a guide lead here at Mindbloom. That means that I support clients in their ketamine journeys, and Casey is one of our clients that has gone through the journey completely now, the full 6 sessions, and he's here to share his story today. Casey, thank you so much for
Thanks
being
for
here.
having me.
Yeah, so wondering if we could start off, Casey, by you just sharing a little bit about yourself and what led you to try ketamine therapy initially.
All right. So I was blessed with childhood with a lot of experience at an early age, which led me to join the Marine Corps. And as a Marine, I flew in helicopters, worked on them, fought in them, spent a couple deployments in Afghanistan. And after the Marine experience, I felt like there was more. So then I joined a 1% motorcycle club and quickly found out that that wasn't the place for me. And throughout childhood, Marine, and motorcycle days, there was drug use and, a lot of ups and downs emotionally. So fought through a lot of that and came to a point after the club days that I knew that things needed to change and had a pretty profound psychedelic experience using DMT and went out of the body, essentially had an ego death. And when I came back down, I'd connected to love and the source, like love as a frequency, this high frequency, and it had changed my life forever. But I didn't know anything about like how to integrate that into my life. And as I continued on my journey, I found my wife, who just so happens to be my twin flame, my soulmate. So she's been hugely instrumental and where I've become, or like who I've become today. So after, having those experiences and, you know, I was sick for years, going to the VA hospital and trying to figure out what was wrong with me. And this was right around the time that me and my wife were really trying to figure out what was going on with my health. And it was a battle for years. And last year, just a year ago, um, I was diagnosed with terminal brain cancer, a glioblastoma diagnosis. And, for some people, they might look at that like a death sentence and, get all sad and stressed out. But for me, it was kind of a relief because I finally had an answer to why I was going through all this pain for years. And, telling me, the VA telling me it was psychosomatic, it was all in my head. Well, it was all in my head. And figuring that out, getting the tumor removed, allowed me to live a life without that constant pain and questioning myself as to why I'm going through all this, like what's wrong with me. So it gave me a lot of clarity. And that helped a lot psychologically because when you have no idea what's going on with you and you're searching for answers and you're putting in the work and you keep going down these dead ends. And so finally having that clarity, me and my wife live on a farm out in Texas. We have an animal rescue. So I stay pretty busy on a day-to-day basis, being able to experience love from all these animals and, especially for my wife. And um, but it's always been hard for me to receive love, to connect with love, which will bring us into more of, deeper into the discussion. So ketamine therapy, I, I had gone outside, right? I've used DMT and mushrooms and other psychedelics for therapeutic uses, and never on those experiences have I really been able to go deep inside and do the work. And ketamine has always stood out to me as like this like miracle substance, medicine, drug, whatever you want to call it, for the simple fact that like it doesn't push you out of your body. You stay in your body and you're able to do this work. So I was so interested in being able to work with ketamine. Um, so yeah, and that's kind of what brought me over to the ketamine realm. to begin with. And that's a little bit of a brief introduction of who I am, what I deal with, and kind of like what I'm about.
Yeah, thank you, Casey. So awesome to hear some of these details and what brought you to ketamine therapy. I see in the chat that, yeah, people are just loving your story and really appreciate you sharing.
That's good.
So, yeah, so in terms of it sounds like you tried ketamine therapy multiple times, right,
Mm-hmm.
before Mindbloom. And I was, what brought you to Mindbloom? What kind of drew you in? And then what were your intentions with working with Mindbloom?
All right, so that's a good question. For a lot of people out there that might be on the fence with using ketamine and what setting to do it under. So I had previously gone and done a 5 sessions intravenously with a clinic in the Dallas area, Fort Worth, Dallas area, and it's a good thing that they offer the treatment. It's a good thing because it can help you, but the whole setting when you're using any type of medicine for this type of deep healing, you need to be comfortable. And the past experiences, I was in a lab type environment, a nurse on the other side of the room monitoring me, hooked up to a machine, and in this like really just not a comfortable environment. And in order to get the most benefit for people who have a guard that they've developed over years, like people who have really built this guard around themselves because they've had to from past experiences. So this protection mechanism, it's hard to really get through that if you're not comfortable when you go into this. So that you end up fighting back against the ketamine because you want to have some, coherent state so you know what's going on around you so you can protect yourself. So just right up the bat, I knew that this wasn't for me. And the intravenous IV is administration of ketamine is great. It's very strong and it hits very quickly. So I needed a company I could work with that would give me the luxury of being at my house, being in a comfortable environment. My wife could just kind of hang out in the corner of the room, look out for me. I've had an integrative guide to work with my whole way through, that if I needed anything, I could reach out to him or her. In this case, it was a her for me. And then I had a psychiatrist, or the prescriber of the medicine. He was an awesome, awesome guy. And anytime I needed anything, if I had a question about the dosage, if I had any questions about what supplements I'm on could interact with the ketamine. So it was all it's all very easy to reach out and have this connection with people I'm working with and feel more comfortable. And at your in your bedroom, in my own bed, I mean, you can't really being more comfortable and open to the treatment than being in your own home. So Mindbloom, hugely like very successful experience with Mindbloom. The whole company, how it's set up, I just really, I just commend the company for sure, like what you guys have built and being able to work with y'all. Like I'm such a fan and would advocate for Mindbloom for sure.
Yeah, beautiful. And you speak to something so important, something that's part of our core values of how we treat clients around the mindset and the physical setting. So really focusing on creating that environment for ourselves, both in our minds and also in our environment, so that we can really, like you mentioned, drop in and let go of resisting the medicine and feel safe. And so speaking of mindset, this is something I know you've talked a lot about on Instagram stories, how that's shifted for you through this treatment. So wondering if you could speak a bit to that process for
Absolutely. So I think mindset, if with anything in life, they've always, told you 90% mental, 10% physical, and, you've heard this your whole life. And, actually applying that and being all in on something. When you're going to do some ketamine therapy, you need to be all in on this treatment. You need to have specific intentions. You can't go into you know, any type of therapy with one foot in and one foot out. Like you have to be fully set in your mind to do the work. You have to be ready and prepared to push through the resistance. You know, this is something that you know, me and a group of mine and some friends speak on big time is, you know, fighting through the resistance because on the other side is freedom. And it's uncomfortable, but going through with such a straight and focused mindset on what your goals are, set your intentions, and to accomplish these goals and to meet up with these intentions through the journey. Mentally, that's everything. So if you can stay focused with your mind and stay true to your whole purpose of doing this, it's very valuable to your success in treatment. Absolutely.
Beautiful. Yeah, and so with the mindset piece, you mentioned this shift for you. In addition to the mindset, you also mentioned that your mindset kind of shifted around vulnerability is for you, around harbor that and how that affects your relationships. Could you speak a bit more to that,
Yeah,
please?
that's a great question. I think a lot of men. So I'm 31 years old. My father was one of those tough, super toxic, like you cannot feel anything. If you cry, you're weak. You know, Rose like just raised me on this really poisonous value system as a man. And vulnerability was not something that I was ever afforded due to my childhood. Being vulnerable meant more pain in other ways, or, you know, you have to be strong and you can't feel sad. You can't feel these things. Anger was the real tool growing up to get me through life because it protected me. But where does that leave you the ability to drop in and be vulnerable and go through those experiences and allow these emotions to come up instead of choking them down? So being vulnerable, allowing yourself to be vulnerable in the space with ketamine and in life in general is so important. And I think that we've lost sight of that. So the strength that comes with vulnerability, being able to go in deep and to let these emotions out, to be able to cry, to be able to feel these traumatic experiences that you've choked down for so long because they're not okay. Like it doesn't matter, you know, what anyone else feels about it except for you. You got to process that trauma. And the only way to truly process that, I believe, wholeheartedly, is to get into your vulnerable state. Allow that to come back up and out and show itself as you're doing this work. So being vulnerable has allowed me to come back into touch with some of these really deep seated traumas that I've experienced in my life. And without being able to reach those states through vulnerability, you wouldn't be as strong. So the strength that comes from being able to be vulnerable, it's undeniable because just like how I'm dealing with life now, like, you know, you brought up like a relationship with my wife and like how being vulnerable has helped me through treatment. Well, with my wife, being able to connect deeper with myself and to be able to love myself and find strength in that vulnerability, now it is reflecting in my outside world and I'm able to be there more for my wife. I'm able to show affection that I've struggled with my whole life. Receiving love has been the hardest battle of my life. I have this amazing wife who loves me more than anything in this world and would do anything for me. But if you won't allow that to happen because you don't allow that vulnerability to receive love and kindness and all these acts of kindness, you know, through love, it's tough. So now through the ketamine with my wife, I can connect with her on a much deeper level and it just feels amazing. I really feel like, you know, in the last 6 weeks, um, you know, I can connect with just love, that heart space so much better. So a lot of progress in that area. And vulnerability was huge to be able to get there.
Well, that's really, really powerful. It sounds like working with the medicine helps you lower this guard that maybe was conditioned and built over time with your upbringing around not being able to feel vulnerable and not being able to meet yourself in this intimate way. And then after meeting yourself in that way through the medicine, you notice that transform and expand into your relationship with your wife and noticing the byproduct of that closeness, that
Yeah,
happiness.
yeah, it is. The biggest thing, just to touch on it one more time really quickly, is like you said, to let your guard down. Ketamine allows you to slip past your guard, freely slip past your guard, and go in deeper and talk to yourself, talk to those parts of you that you have struggled to connect with, the inner child, or however your trauma has entered your life. You can now have a one-on-one conversation in a very comfortable environment, which is, like I said, Mindbloom is able to give you that possibility by doing this work at your house and slipping past your guard and going in deeply one-on-one with yourself and working through that. So just to speak on that a little more about ketamine allowing you to get past your guard, it's tough to do that. So that's why this is why it's been so impactful for me specifically using this therapy. So just to touch on that a little more.
Thank you for
Mm-hmm.
expanding on that. And then I'm curious if you're open to sharing with us today, what were some of the most powerful one-on-one conversations with yourself that led to that transformation that you're seeing today?
Yes. So the first session, my intention, setting your intention for your sessions is a big thing, because if you go into your session with a clear-cut intention, knowing exactly what you want to face while you're in there, it's more than likely that the ketamine experience is going to bring you some form of healing in the area that you're focused on. So my first session was self-forgiveness. In my life, as a Marine, I was a knucklehead of a kid, and ripping with, motorcycle club. There have been people that I've hurt in my life. And for someone like me, I'm a protector. I'm I'm not out there to hurt anybody. I'm 100% a protector. But unfortunately, with the career paths that I've chosen and the life that I've lived, I've inflicted harm and pain and physically, mentally, emotionally, psychologically, and on other people. And you have to be able to accept that, and then you have to forgive yourself for that, because you're not going to be able to go find somebody that you met one day and got into a fight with perhaps, and look him up and ask him for forgiveness, because you're not going to be afforded that opportunity. So to be able to go in and, and look to myself for forgiveness and dive deep into that, because if you don't, it eats away at you. It'll eat away at you for the rest of your life until you really go in there and do that work. So I was able to dig deep, work through the self-forgiveness, and could love parts of me that you look at like, wow, man, like these are bad parts of you, but these are only parts of you that have been necessary to survive. So diving in deep, finding space to forgive myself. That was session one, and that was huge. And then the 5 ongoing sessions, it's hard for me to experience immense joy, to just laugh and cry tears of joy and be so happy in the moment, because I'm always thinking about what's happening, on the left side of the timeline in the past, or too far to the right, and they could cause depression and anxiety, and you need to keep that timeline present. So being able to get into a space where I can center myself again and work on fear, the fear of the unknown, the fear of loneliness or isolation, and a couple other of my experiences were just so profound, like just so profound, and filled me with happiness and joy. And the intention that I would set was, I am loving awareness. And I would repeat, I am loving awareness, over and over again. And as I'm repeating it in the ketamine experience, I can just feel this joy now and it just brings out this happiness and this unconditional love and unlocks parts of you that you've had to lock up. So you're reconnecting with heart, your source and the highest frequency out there, love. So the last couple sessions were just really connecting with that. And then, I had a darker session connecting with fear. And, like the life I've lived, fear has been a tool for survival. And it's also been, to my detriment of what's going to happen in the next 5 minutes, the fear of the unknown, anxiety. So getting into the space of ketamine and setting my intentions of overcoming fear of the unknown, and getting to the space with ketamine, and I'm like in this wave and I'm being crashed under this wave over and over again. It's cold, it's dark, it's lonely, I need some oxygen, and I'm just fighting. And then I stop fighting and I get into the fear, and I'm looking at fear like, this is just fear. This is 4 or 5 different chemicals in your body that transform into this fight or flight fear. And you're like, breathe through it and just become one with it, and like laugh at it and know that it's healthy, but it's also not, not necessary to be afraid of something that hasn't happened yet, and like an uncomfortable situation. So you push through that fear, and then happiness comes back, and the overwhelming, undeniable joy and bliss that I experience with just being present. So hugely impactful on my life. And I hope that, answers your question pretty well.
Absolutely. Thank
Mm-hmm.
you for that. I love that this full spectrum experience. I think that's so important with psychedelic medicine of any kind, just to understand that it's not always bliss, and it's not always really easy. There's fear that comes up for a reason, for us to work through it and bring awareness to it, and to bring love to those parts of ourselves that might feel kind of icky. So that's really incredible. And it's something we talked about in the last live, and something I think we'll continue to talk about because it's so important, is this concept of psychedelic integration. And that is this process in between our sessions, essentially, of pulling out the lessons and insights from the journeys and actually making changes in our lives. So setting goals and taking actions and utilizing that window of neuroplasticity that makes it, easier for us to choose these different goals and steps to create sustainable change. So while you're sharing about this journey, it's very clear the work and careful attention that you've put in. And it's not like this medicine just flipped a switch for you, right? It's like you had this experience with the medicine that brought you greater awareness, and then you took that awareness and you actually did something about it. So I'd love to speak a bit about that. What are some that you took for yourself, and some of those goals that you set for yourself to create?
Yeah, so that's a great question, and I'm happy to share the aspect of integration and why it's so important when you're doing this type of work. So if you look at the brain, this is the way it was described to me, as the neural pathways being on a ski slope, right? And you have all these old tracks on the ski slope, and it's very easy to find yourself back in these same tracks. Well, ketamine wipes those clean, and you get the chance to go through and start your tracks wherever you want them. Go down the slope however you want in life. Choose the path that you want. So you're now having the ability to integrate on a fresh sheet of snow, whatever you want to call it, and you can go through and make sure that this person that you want to be, the person that is healed from these responses you've dealt with in the past, the person that you want to be strong, vulnerable, powerful, and in very balanced ways, you can focus on what you want to do, have your goals, have your intentions, and as you're coming through these ketamine experiences on a daily basis, you get the chance to be the person, the future self, the future self of you that you want to be, who you want to be every single day, the loving, caring, open, just happy Casey. For me, I wanted to be this guy. So in order to be that guy, I had to set goals, and any type of behavior any type of behavior that distracts you from being the person that you want to be right now, you need to get rid of that. So as you go through your day, and it may not stick right away, it takes a couple sessions, but you have to stay focused on, this is my intention, this is my goal. And throughout the 6-week period that I was on there, I stuck to that. And that is so important, integrating that throughout your time working with Mindbloom or with ketamine in general. You have to stay true to your intentions, and that's the biggest part of the integration. Without doing that, you're just going to end up, if you will, relapsing on your old self, and you don't want that. It's possible, and it's nothing to be ashamed of, but you really want to stick to your intentions for the integration standpoint. Absolutely.
That's awesome. So it sounds like part of your integration process was really reminding yourself of your intentions on a day-to-day basis and every action, and choosing actions that were in alignment.
Yes, ma'am.
Beautiful. I love that description, because sometimes making sense of our journeys can feel a bit nuanced or overwhelming. And so that piece is just so important. And that's part of the guide for the program. Hold that space, ask questions, offer suggestions.
Mm-hmm.
And I notice we're starting to come up on our time together, but did want to check in with you, Casey, and see if there was anything that you're feeling really called to share with our audience today, if there were any last pieces of your story that you wanted to share.
It's been a blessing. I've had a pretty wild life, and the biggest advice that I can give at the end of the day, it's you versus you. There's nobody else out there that is going to be able to deal with your trauma, your baggage, or whatever you want to call it. Like, it's you versus you. You are going to hold yourself accountable when no one else is watching. So integrity is a big thing. You can say all these things that you want, but actions will always speak louder than words. And your actions, your affirmations are very important. So if you can plug in really solid affirmations and follow it up with your actions every single day, you're unstoppable. Come into your power. We are literally limitless beings. We have so much power, every single one of us. So if you think that a life circumstance is enough to keep you from being your best self, change your perspective. Know that you wouldn't have gone through those experiences if it wasn't for a greater reason. It sucks at the time, but at the end of the day, you're the only person keeping you from growing. So go into that resistance, find your freedom, and just keep moving forward, because it's possible for anybody.
Yes, I totally agree with that. Thank you so much for sharing your insight, wisdom, your story. I see so many people appreciating you sharing, so I hope you continue to keep sharing and keep moving along your path. And thank you all so much for being here today.
Yes, ma'am.
Before I end this live, I just want to let everyone know that if you didn't catch the beginning of this conversation, Casey shared a lot of wisdom about his story, about his journey with Mindbloom, how he integrated it all. And you're welcome to pop back onto our feed to review the whole video. Thanks again so much for being here, and hope to see you next time. Hi, everyone.
Bye, guys.
Hi, Casey.